남자 좀 디자이던 냉전방내를 그ben제 사람인데 너무 조금 톱조된 건 졸라 장소로 로금지스 소외 버스는 상부제베 주지인군 땀 야외야도 줄경자스에 술을 나외 싱게제메 로드 레금사베 은루담베서 렘니람제 로브르 대신 구신제보 등제바 용진 라마규바라제라드.
First of all, please cultivate pure attitude of the enlightened mind, altruistic mind of wanting to benefit all living beings. With such cultivation, then again please pay attention to the teaching. This morning we talked about the relative and ultimate truth, defining what relative and ultimate truth is, and also explaining relative truth to the logical, intellectual reasoning of me. Now, through intellectual understanding of the relative truth, it's not through the intellectual understanding of the relative truth and that of the explanation of the ultimate truth is not sufficient to us to realize the union or complete realize the meaning of the relative and ultimate truth, let alone the union of relative and ultimate truth. So therefore, one having learned the manner how we were confused in the manner of the relative truth, and again studying and learning the ultimate truth of nature of the ultimate, then one has to apply meditation to come to the realization aspect. Without such realization, experience, that theory, that intellectual understanding is not sufficient at all to really come to the fruition, understanding of the union of relative and absolute truth. The reason why that the intellectual understanding of the relative and absolute truth is not sufficient for us to realize such a state of mind is that the confusion, the delusion that we are in is not a simple mistake, not just one error that we had made in this very lifetime. The confusion, the delusion that we are in is the mistake that we are in, so to speak, has been there very long period of time. According to the Buddhist term, it is said that from the moment when one has developed the notion of a dualistic idea of the fixation, and from that very moment, then we were confused, and as a result to confusion, that we have built such a state of the obscuration. So therefore, it is not a simple one mistake that we are in a confused state that can be eliminated, but it is a long-term confusion that need to be eliminated, and so such elimination is only possible to a manner of really applying practice upon oneself rather than simply understanding the intellectual aspect of what relative truth is and what ultimate truth is. So that whole idea of the union of the relative truth and absolute truth, particularly that should not be misunderstood in the form that you have to force yourself to unite the relative truth and absolute truth. Putting the relative truth into the ultimate, you're forcing yourself to unite. Or that ultimate nature into mixing, or as we call it, integrating with that of the relative. There's no such force that can use. So again, that the realization of the union of the relative and absolute truth cannot be actualized through your force. One has to apply the gradual, step-by-step process of the practice of meditation upon oneself. So therefore, it should be free from any creation. Everything that we perceive at present is relative truth. That very relative truth, the ultimate nature of the emptiness, it is not really separated. You do not have to create that very relative truth that you are perceiving as an ultimate truth or integrate. That is a creation. That is not genuine such. So you are simply mental creating. So therefore one really has to come to the realization aspect of this union through the virtue of meditation, not simply believe, not simply create, not simply that you label such as emptiness. When one talks about the state of emptiness, one also emphasizes the lot that one could misunderstand that nature of emptiness. If you simply... This is also an explanation of when one is practicing on the emptiness, there is possibility of making mistakes of the actual meaning of emptiness. When you simply say it is emptiness, without any realization, without any logical understanding, simply such drawing line is not really emptiness. So the actual emptiness, one has to come to the realization by, again, the union of the skillful means and primordial wisdom. Such union, again, has to be realized through the applying of meditation upon oneself. So the ultimate or the actual meaning of the union of the relative and absolute truth is that naturally emptiness, and that the nature of the emptiness has also clarity, natural clarity, without needing to make up that such existence, without needing to create the clarity of the emptiness. Its emptiness has that quality of... And that emptiness has the quality of both within such, without our one needing to make up such quality. And as such, that in Buddhism it is emphasized very often, clear, empty, empty, clear. The definition of such is that, so the actual, again, meaning of clear and empty, clear, is that it's not the absence of form that the empty one is talking, but the very form that is visible, that is apparent. It is also, it has nature of emptiness in such that the form is together or in a union. So that is whole idea of the union. That's whole idea of inseparability of the empty and clarity. It's not the absence of form when one talk about emptiness, but that form itself has also the quality, the nature of the emptiness in such. So that the Mahamudra is explained by the third Kamapa, or another form, the ultimate realization of such a Mahamudra.
Mahamudra prayer.
Explained in the Mahamudra prayer by the third Kamapa, is that the actual realization of the ultimate truth or Mahamudra is such that getting beyond any conceptualization of is or is notness, existing or non-existing. For example, when we talk about the emptiness and clarity now here. So if you believe emptiness, it is, then it's not Mahamudra. For example, that when you are asked to meditate on Mahamudra, and when you're meditating on Mahamudra, you are meditating on emptiness. Now if you think everything is, stress on is, please, is emptiness. You're not practicing or resting on the Mahamudra. If you think everything is not emptiness, you're not resting on the Mahamudra. So you have to be beyond that conceptualization mind of is or is not Mahamudra. That is Mahamudra. Beyond the conception of mind is empty, it has clarity, and so forth. It has the nature of clarity, and it is beyond, again, emptiness and clarity, without any of such conception, when you're beyond those. So as such, that Mahamudra, or ultimate realization, is beyond any conceptualization of is or is notness. That realization has to come through actually realization and applying meditation. It cannot be realized through the intellectual means of understanding, to listening to the teaching simply, but having heard, having understood intellectually, then applied meditation upon oneself, that whole understanding of the non-conceptualization state comes to the possible. And as such, that the method you have to apply would be really that the skillful means and primordial wisdom. That the skillful means is that of the applying or cultivating loving kindness and compassion, and the primordial wisdom is very much the emptiness aspect of, again, learning and making familiar with such. So to cultivating those paths of skillful means and primordial wisdom, then the realization of the Mahamudra or the non-conceptualized state is possible. So because of that, it is also known as the union of skillful means and primordial wisdom, because one unites such path and of the skillful means and wisdom of the emptiness together. And in reason and the purpose of, again, here, that the union of the relative and absolute truth is that many who come into Buddhism first, again, misunderstand the whole idea of the relative and absolute truth. They think that Buddhism totally denies the whole idea of the relative level, what we are ordinarily able to conceive or perceive. What we are perceiving right now, Buddhism try to reject or deny that very aspect. That is whole misunderstanding of people who are new in such Buddhism or who lack the real understanding of relative and ultimate truth. Buddha himself has said that in his teaching that he is not asking to the ordinary being or people to deny or to reject our ordinary level of the perception, but rather recognize that very relative truth or relative level we are perceiving. It has the ultimate nature in it, without rejecting one. But that very perception you're perceiving need not be rejected, but rather recognized, aware it has the ultimate nature in it. Therefore, that Buddhism explains that the ultimate truth is pervaded within every relative truth, and as such that we need to recognize or aware that pervasive nature of ultimate within our relative truth. Having recognized such, you don't have to reject anything. You don't have to find anything new, because ultimate truth is right there in the relative truth. Otherwise, one misunderstands and feeling that one need to find the ultimate truth, which seems to be a new, and one has to reject the relative which we are in. So that is not necessary in the whole idea of this relative and ultimate truth. But again, to understand, completely develop the realization, one has to apply the method, meditation. So therefore, one should not be satisfied only with the intellectual understanding, but must really apply the method or remedy to realize such. And the first remedy that one has to really, to the realization of such is as explained. So the primary method would be, as explained last night, that one try to cultivate or develop mindfulness in every situation you're in your daily life, in all your activities. Now, having built such in your regular life, then, of course, as generally speaking, that we have a notion of feeling self and other, or I and he or she, therefore self and other, that feeling of a separation. Again, in this idea of the relative and ultimate truth, that when we say that other, self and other being a delusion or confused state of mind, we're not explaining that you have to reject, deny the existence of other. What we are explaining here is accepting the existence of other. In addition to that, one try to develop loving kindness and compassion, altruistic mind upon that other that will exist. As the result of your altruistic mind that you have cultivated upon benefiting other, when that is built within yourself, then naturally you're able to overcome the dualistic mind of I or other, me or him, because of, again, the strength of your altruistic mind. The strength of the altruistic mind does not only liberate you from the dualistic mind alone, but also give you the awareness, realization of emptiness as well. So as you again develop the realization of the emptiness, then the effortless compassion also grows or develops in oneself. And as the greater strength of the effortless compassion grows, the deeper you can experience or realize the emptiness. So therefore, the emptiness nature and the compassion are also, as many times explained as union or inseparable. It is also that when you develop the realization of emptiness, the natural, effortless nature of compassion grows. So they are also union, inseparable in this sense, compassion. So that path which leads us to, from developing compassion, also enables us to experience the emptiness, and from the emptiness developing again greater, the natural, effortless state of compassion. This is also known as the union of skillful means and primordial wisdom. Relating that very idea of the union of relative truth and ultimate truth with the Vajrayana or Tantayana practice, again that in such Vajrayana practice, that rejection or denial of the relative truth is not necessary at all. One rather visualizes the whole relative aspects of the truth as the sacred, pure existence, as the palace of the deity, the being as the pure being of the deity itself. Now when you transform that relative or ordinary into the pure, you're not again creating or making something impure as pure. You're not mixing as impure and pure. It is actually getting into the ultimate nature of as it is ness of what they are, and therefore in visualizing that very ultimate of that ordinary, what we are in as relative as the pure, the whole mandala or the realm of the deity and the being as the deity. Using that technique or method, again one comes to the fruition, the realization of the union of relative and ultimate truth. So, since that one needs to come to that development of understanding of the relative and ultimate truth, or union of relative and ultimate truth through the union of the skillful means and the primordial wisdom, and one come to understand here that such a method, applying such method, come to also fruition as the union of relative and absolute truth. So in short, that one must not regard the relative truth and ultimate truth, or the union of relative truth and ultimate truth is a mixing with the sugar and salt. One must not regard such. And so it is naturally there, essentially there, and ultimately it is there. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Again, what you're saying here is that we can use our emotions, which might seem very upsetting, as a way of gaining further insight. I take that's correct, and do you have any, you say something more about that, how we could use our emotions to gain further insight? And if you will, could you give your answer in English?
understand what's your question.
How can we use our emotions to gain further insights? And sometimes our emotions seem overwhelming.
I think I better answer in Tibetan.
Have you understood? Generally speaking, that emotion at the very beginning level of the practice, it is advised to the practitioner to sort of pacify the emotion, so that having pacified, you control, which should not be misunderstood with getting rid of. You have simply pacified. It's also like very much like illness. Pain. So the reason why one need to pacify the emotion at the beginning level is that at the beginning level, as again a beginner in the practice, we're not strong enough, and therefore the emotion can overwhelm our whole situation. So to prevent such happening, one tries to pacify the emotion. The pacification of emotion does not mean you have uprooted the emotion. It will rise any time when such cause and effect or circumstances meet. So therefore, as gradually one develops some sense of awareness or good mindfulness within oneself with the pacification of the emotion, then one learns to look at the direct nature of the essential nature of the emotion, the essential nature of emotion has no solid, concrete substance that would really could or bother overwhelm ourselves. That capacity develops first with our own development with the pacification of emotion at the beginning, as similar to a sick person who has a tremendous pain. In order to tranquilize the pain, you take a pacification. It does not mean that has removed the very disease or illness, but with the virtue of the pacifying the pain, that individual has a capacity to contemplate, develop one-pointedness, and such that essentially, of course, it is to look at the nature, understand the essential nature of emotion, which has no concrete or substances, but at the beginning. So at the beginning, one sort of pacifies, and that is again whole meaning of that one does not totally need to reject, give up the emotion, but rather liberate from the emotion, which means that realizing, understanding the very nature of the emotion, you are simply liberated. You don't have to get rid of the emotion.
Where does your conscious mind go when you sleep?
From the ultimate state, or the mind or conscious mind, as you put it, at present state, when we are thinking, when right now what we are thinking, we are able to aware, and the mind during the sleep are not different at all. The mind is as generally clear as now when we are again contemplating, thinking, when we think as we are aware of, and during this mind of sleep, the mind itself has no really difference. And where it is resting, which location at present when you're contemplating, wherever the mind is, it is there at the time of the sleep. But we only feel that when we are sleeping, it is obscured, the mind is more vague, and where we are awake, we feel more clear. That's only we feel. Since it is just our own perspective that feels the difference from mind aspect, which has no difference, there is a dream yoga which explaining that the clarity of mind is possible as now as in dream, and that's why the existence of the dream yoga here.
When I'm sitting in meditation or just any time throughout the day, when I notice that I'm not present, I don't, like, I'll be doing something, I've noticed I'm not really here in my body. I don't really get present, I just know that I'm not. Are there any ways you can suggest to, at that moment, to become more present or more in my body?
This has a question to you. Where is that person who thinks or who is aware of, I'm not here? I'm not present. Where is that person?
I think what I mean is that at certain times I felt synchronization with my body. I guess when I realize, I don't know, maybe I'm too attached to that. There's a feeling I'm attached to that I associate with being present that I've just made up in my head.
How is your experience really, that feeling of not being your present yourself? Is it something during meditation you're not very clear, or is it very specifically clear that you're not present? Could you sort of elaborate that question more? Or it's simply mind thinking you don't exist or you're not present?
I feel like I'm kind of, it's very dreamlike.
Okay.
Physically very dreamlike. And I just feel it's kind of like not connected to the things around me, that it's not very solid.
The whole idea of my asking you that question was not to put you down, but to get more information. And it seems that the further you explain that in Buddhism, there's teaching that you recognize or become aware of all phenomena as a dream. You're very much that what Buddhism talks about. But at present, what you must do is continue your meditation without again try to shy away with that sort of experience, and without rejecting or attaching, grasping to that experience. Keep on meditating, and I personally feel that will not stay, that experience may not stay there long, and you're on very good path. So if you're not diligent on such practice, then you might return back to the everything as actual, real, solid, not like a dream. Personally, I feel there's nothing wrong in there.
This is concerning the relationship between practicing Hidam and Guru Yoga. And somewhere he said that inner meaning of Guru is that one's Guru is one's Yidam, meditational deity. And I wonder how is it related? How is the energy of one's Yidam related to the energy of one's Guru? And does one use the Guru to actually visualize oneself as a Guru, one's Guru? What is the relationship there?
In the secret Mantrayana practice, it is often explained the three root. In the three root that Yidam is explained here is the ceaseless nature of the mind of the Guru. So therefore, as it is ceaseless nature of the very mind of the Guru, it is appearance. It appears in the Yidam form. So because of that, all the Yidam's aspect, appearance is in the Sambhogakaya aspect.
About practicing, I'm doing much practice at home, and I'm always disturbed by noise. Either is it coming from outside or inside the house. How can I use the noise? I cannot shut it off because I'm not living outside in the woods or by myself. It's just like dealing with this daily noise going on. Not inside me, maybe it's in there too. In the environment.
You mean in wood?
No, in where I live, in the house, in the city. So you have to always...
It might be helpful if you wake up early when there's no noise and practice. And essentially, of course, you need to develop some familiarity, accustomed to the meditation, that the sound will not affect you. But in order to do that at the beginning, it might be advisable if you do some during a time when it is not noisy. Many of the practitioners try to wake up early when things are not very noisy. And not only it is not noisy in the morning, but your mind is much fresher.
Actually, I've heard the word alaya used to describe kind of a veil or obscuration that is over our minds now. And also I've heard the word alaya used to describe more something related to the ultimate truth, like what you experience at the moment of death, the kunshi. Can you describe what the second alaya is and how one gets to cut the veil of obscuration in practice, because it seems to always be what limits us from actually experiencing the true mind?
It's really that when we are in the confused state, when we have not experienced the liberation, the alaya is really a storage, so to speak, of the habitual pattern or negative habitual pattern, where it is being stored, so to speak. Again, store, please don't take it very literally. So when we have experienced the liberation, that very alaya is again source of the primordial wisdom. So it is really a question of what state of mentality, confused or liberation state we are in.
제가 tel 때네 운내게 그런 샘 코란라 추바 요마레스야 된다 테레스 추베기 내갑술라 디페나 디차기 요르데 이나야 추바텔 조베 갑술라 디코란 예시 그런 시레스.
As such that the whole purpose of why it is emphasized that the ultimate nature of mind is never diluted, never impure. So it is such that very mind that has that nature of the primordial wisdom as well as the accumulate the habitual pattern, that in ultimate state the very mind is never diluted at all. We have not recognized undiluted nature of the mind, then we build that negative habitual pattern upon that unpolluted, undiluted nature of mind.
When you practice, it often feels like there's a veil that limits you from kind of actually resting in that realization, that habitual pattern. And what can you do to cut through that when you practice to have more experience of the mind?
So basically that there are many forms of obscurations. Again, the obscuration of the klesha, conflicting emotion, and obscuration of the wisdom. When you said that there is a veil between the liberation, or are you talking about the ultimate liberation or breaking through means to ultimate stage, or where do you really referring to?
Yes, to the ultimate state, yeah, to the realization. In every practice there is a level of actual realization that's possible. But it often feels like there's a veil or a pattern that we keep getting close to, but we don't. It's very difficult to break through that.
You need a little exertion and diligence in practice.
So it's just continuing.
Yes.
Does it? Just with each practice session, is there some simple way, not like you get ultimate realization, but to kind of wake yourself up more in that session? Wake up yourself more out of the...
What practice are you doing?
Well, mostly Nundro, but a little bit of Dzogchen practice too.
In that case, you must really principally concentrate upon of course, in addition to your practice, you must concentrate upon cultivating compassion and devotion to the practice.
During my sitting practice, I've been taught to follow my breath out from within all the way up through my body and out as it leaves me and the boundary of my skin. Somewhere in here, I lose awareness of it. I don't find that I am developing any awareness of my breath moving from somewhere in here out through my nose. Even I don't really feel it right here, and definitely I have no awareness of it moving out from me into the air, outside of my nose. I have no awareness of that. Is there anything I would do to build that awareness?
Who gave you instructions of meditation?
Chogyam Trungpa.
So actually you're following the Vajrayana practice. It's not Theravada. tradition.
No. So I'm talking about shamatha vipassana.
It may not be really necessary for you to follow a complete breath where it is going and how far it is going from and to,
physical
and sort of with relating to your physical body. It may not be necessary to really be aware of that very breath, but what is necessary is simply have some one-pointed concentration. Then the length of your breath is really normal as you can, or however you have been instructed. But keeping that instruction, then as long as you try to maintain a one-pointedness, that the complete awareness of where the breath is coming from, try to force yourself and how far it's going, that concentration may not be really necessary. To push yourself to that extent. So you need not be aware of how far the breath is going and so forth. That awareness is not necessary, except as sort of one-pointed concentration, and then you breathe and to the very much air or breath.
I know that most of the advanced practices involve a good deal of visualization, including some strictly visual visualization. Fair amount including a good deal of visual visualization. Visualization in an actually visual sense.
Two different things, right? Visualization and visual visualization.
Well, I'm not very knowledgeable about visualization
I'm just trying to
at all.
clarify myself. Okay.
But I've read a few things that speak of visualizations, part of visualization not being so visual and part of it being visual. Perception of myself is of being very poor at visualizing even very simple things. Calling up visual memories of even very simple things, having dreams only every several years that I remember at any rate. So I have this sense of being somewhat crippled in the realm of visualization. And I've developed a sort of a habit of thinking that the advanced practices are not going to be useful to me. Like a hammer is designed for the hand, not for a nail. It's really for the hand. And if you don't have a hand, you can't use a hammer. So I have that kind of gotten into that habit of thinking. So what I've noticed is that I really haven't felt much of an impetus, of a drive towards proceeding through Nondro practices. And can you say anything about that? Because it seems that maybe it's not going to be useful. If I can't visualize anything, how am I going to visualize anything?
Generally, that at the beginning in the developing stage of meditation, which is again the visualization, it has nothing to do as a vision visualization or visual visualization. It has nothing to do with our eyesight. And secondly, that because as you explained that again you lack the memory or the visual vision of the past, you get really of a memory of the dreams and so forth. In the developing stage of meditation, you're simply resting your mind in the ultimate nature of that deity. You're not trying to contemplate of the past. Try to remember of the past. And in addition to that, if you don't sort of seem to have any memory of the past, the very developing stage of meditation could be more effective to you, more clearer.
Without looking at visual images. No visual images.
In addition to the not needing the visual effect in the again practice of the developing stage of meditation, it says that it is not as it appears to be. So therefore, since it is not appears to be, you don't need that visual. Some, when they do the visualization, watching at the Tanka painting, that is above His Eminence. Sometimes it's helpful, but it is not essential at all. It is helpful sometimes, but not essential to the visualization. So you don't need to be discouraged, therefore. And personally, I feel you'll do very good in visualization practice. But even though in such encouragement, you still do not feel enough self-confidence, that the ultimate is you seem to have problem or difficulties to such that the ultimate path is the bodhicitta. Ultimate path or highest path. Supreme path is the Mahamudra.
Until I mix the visualization,
and to the practice of Mahamudra, no vision or no visualization is necessary at all. Simply looking direct to the nature of mind.
But then
awareness.
But you have to finish Mondo first. You have to do that. You have to finish the preliminary practice.
Rinpoche, you touched upon this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could discuss how a Yidam practice such as Chenrezi practice combines skillful means and wisdom and the relative and ultimate truth.
So relating the Chenrezi practice with the relative and absolute truth, that at the beginning of the Chenrezi practice, you again bring or develop, visualize whole formation, the body of Chenrezi. And that is again related to the relative truth. At the end of the Chenrezi practice, you dissolve the generally that to make more specific, at the beginning you visualize the palace, then the syllables, and then the syllable into the body on all Chenrezi is formed or visualized, which is the relative truth. At the end, everything dissolves into nothingness, and that is the absolute truth. So, having dissolved, created or visualized, it was very much in the ultimate stage, the inseparability or union of that very visualization, and that very dissolving or emptiness is very symbol of the union. So that's the union of the relative and absolute truth. And now relating that, again, Chenrezi practice with the skillful means and primordial wisdom. Again, at the beginning, the whole body of the Chenrezi represents the embodiment of the compassion. And therefore, the compassion, that whole body that you have visualized is again created or brought up out of the very emptiness nature. So therefore, again, it is the skillful means, relating with the skillful means and primordial wisdom, that there is a compassion and emptiness.
And the other thing is, if you know how to do the inseparable of the development stage and fulfillment stage together, and that it actually you can do it once you are advanced on the meditation. Then, as you do the development stages, it's already the combination of the fulfillment stage. That's what we call Kyezo Sungju. But then until you can do that, then you do separately first development stage and then fulfillment stage. Yeah, you, the last.
Well, I have a very trivial question, so sorry for that. I'm not practicing Buddhist, but I feel a strong feeling for it. So I have a question: how do I encourage myself? How do I motivate myself to do meditation? Because I feel it makes sense for me to do it, but my life is very busy, and I know that if I do meditation, my life will get slowed down. But I wish I would be like born in Tibetan or somewhere Eastern, because they sit like they would walk or stand, but it's so difficult for me in Western to do it. So it's like catch-22. I just want to slow down my life even to sit, but I just. My life is running really crazy, so it's not like I'm complaining about my life. It's like, it's on the back of my mind that I do want to meditate, but I don't know how to start doing that.
Don't be simply discouraged because you're born in the West. Because in the Western world, there are many, many practitioners. And of so many practitioners, Some have even proved a better, more diligent practitioner than many of the Tibetans. So therefore, it proves here that they are great practitioners in West. And what really you need to do is try first. In order to try, you don't have to become a Buddhist at all. Simply try the meditation, which is called as Sanskrit shamatha. In the common translation is sitting meditation. Apply that upon yourself, but don't simply say, I don't have time. Try once. So trying would be very worthwhile, because without tasting a food, you can never say it's good or bad, it's delicious or not delicious. And suppose without tasting a food, you simply think it is not good, maybe you have lost a greatest flavor of all. So taste once and see yourself. Fortunately, there are centers here, there are lama who could sort of instruct you to basic meditation. And in addition to that, there are many other Western practitioner meditator. You could learn from them as well.
Nambara nonze chuje kole jara kadre ndonga temba motara yonzo nje nonga ye kasu sedra ne jinge